Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas-The Podcast, where our goal is to keep you informed, inspired, and a little entertained on all things diabetes. The information contained in this program is based on the experience and opinions of the Integrated Diabetes Services clinical team. Please discuss any changes to your treatment plan with your personal healthcare provider before implementing.
Good morning. Thank you for joining our Think Like a Pancreas podcast this morning. My name is Tavia Vital. I'm a registered nurse, certified diabetes care and education specialist with Integrated Diabetes Services. And today I get to host our podcast. We are going to be discussing some of the details involved in what it's like when you have a child with type 1 diabetes, thinking about the diagnosis, how things start off, and then where you go from there and looking at things from a now perspective, looking back. As many of you know, our team at the Integrated Diabetes Services, we all live with type 1 diabetes personally, so myself included. I've lived with type 1 for over 40 years, and I have two kids. My oldest, who's now 17, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 12 in the times of COVID. So I know I'm not alone with that diagnosis time. With that said, I'd like to introduce my partners today. We have Jamie and Jessica. So Jessica, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and your daughter's story?
Yeah. Hey, Tavia. It's good to see you. My name is Jessica, and we're in Colorado here. And my daughter, Grace, who's now almost 8, was diagnosed at 4.5. I do always love hearing other people's diagnosis stories. I'm not sure why that is. I think it's kind of a community when you're in the same boat, but it's probably similar to most other people's stories. 2 months after COVID, which was even a mild case of COVID, she started drinking a ton of water. And I remember those signs on the back of the pediatrician's door, which I still to this day, I have a note to email. There's a lady who actually created those and just had them distributed. So it's on my list to email her and thank her. So I put the dots together, but she started throwing up in the middle of the night and she wasn't sick. There was no fever. And that's when I realized there was an intuition there for me. I think I knew, but I didn't want to know, but I did rush to the ER. And even I told the doctor when we got there, hey, could this be type 1? I don't know how you test for that, and sure enough, we were transported
amazing that they had flyers up that you saw at the pediatrician office and that you thought about it while your daughter was sick. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, and you always think when you see those flyers, those people, not us, but you're reading it because you're just waiting in the pediatrician's office and you're absorbing all the stuff they have on the walls. But I'm glad it was there because it was us.
Hey, Jamie, how about tell us a bit about you and your daughter?
Ellie was diagnosed at 21 months. It was just after Christmas. We thought for sure it was just a respiratory infection. Her breathing was off. She did vomit from time to time, but at that age, it just kind of gets chalked up to, she's got a virus from daycare so we didn't read too much into it. And then her breathing continually was off. So we thought, well, let's take her to Emerge to get checked out. And so we took her, I think it was 8:00 at night, and it was during COVID. So we didn't even have a doctor come in and visit us for the first 4 hours that we were there.
Wow.
So here she is, 21 months old. It's midnight. So I said, we're going home. I can't sit there all night with her. So then the next morning I had to work at the hospital. And so my husband brought her in, and of course he couldn't leave her to go to the bathroom or anything. So on my breaks, I would go down to the emergency and sit with her so he could at least go pee or stretch his legs or whatever he had to do. Well, near the end of my shift, she was diagnosed with a respiratory infection and severe constipation. So we left the hospital, got home, and he was home, separate vehicles because I was at work. And by the time I got home, her lips were white and we rushed right back, and they didn't even make us triage again. They just took us right back. And the doctor that was on, he pulled down his mask because everybody's wearing masks during COVID, smelled her breath and said type 1.
Wow.
Gosh.
So we didn't even have blood work done until the very last visit. So 3 trips to Emerge in 36 hours. She was in DKA. Our family doctor said that if we waited another 24 hours, we would have lost her. Yeah. So here we are in Canada, and that was our fun experience.
Story. Yeah.
But yeah, same thing. She was drinking lots, wetting through diapers. I'd even change her once, twice through the middle of the night thinking what is going on here? Yeah, she's drinking more. Does it make sense? But I even have a cousin who's type 1. Her other side of the family they have some type 1s in the family. So I didn't even know really the signs and symptoms to look for because she was diagnosed at age 7, and that was like 30 plus years ago.
Right. Yeah.
So, was it the same thing? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
But so yeah, it was scary.
My son's story is a little different because since I have type 1 diabetes and I'm a diabetes educator, I know about research studies that are looking for screening risk for type 1 diabetes. So my kids had already been enrolled in a variety of research studies since birth. I actually took cord blood and tested and know that both of my sons have the high risk genes for type 1 diabetes. So due to that, then we could choose to enroll in other studies. So we were in a study called TEDDY that monitored blood tests every 3 months. And we brought in tons of samples of other things that they collected throughout the study. And it's from birth until age 14, or until someone converts to having type 1 diabetes. And so I already knew that my oldest son, Isaiah, he already was making antibodies. So he started making antibodies when he was a toddler, and his A1C started creeping up when he was a young child. And then we did whatever we thought we could do to try to intervene, right? Whether any of it worked or it just was how his body worked, who knows, right? But we did the higher doses of vitamin D and vitamins and omega-3 and probiotics. And, we tried all the dietary things that at that time, not 5 years ago, now like 17 to 15 years ago, that we read about may or may not help reduce risk, right? So we were doing all the things we could possibly try to do to try to prevent it from really kicking in. And he went 10 years with antibodies before his blood sugar was high enough to diagnose him. And he's always been thin. He's always been small, but so was I. And so was my husband when we were little. And he was just so tiny. And we ate a big dinner. I think it was like spaghetti, it was something carby. And then we had a campfire outside and they were making s'mores. And my son came in and I looked at him and I said, "Do you feel okay?" He said, I don't really feel very well. And he was just the wrong color. He was like pasty white looking. And I thought, oh, so I had him go wash his hands and we checked and his glucose was, I don't remember what it was now, 400 or 500. It read on the meter. Oh, I remember now. It was 367 the first check and then 412 the second check. And I said, "All right, Bub, this is it. Like, this is what we knew was going to come. It's here." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you can just give me some insulin, right? Like, I can just have some of yours and then I'll feel better." And I was like, I started crying all over the place. Like, I was like, "Yes, I'll get you a glass of water." And then I went in the other room and cried my eyes out for a bit because he was just like, "Okay, yep, I guess I need some insulin." And I was like, but he was okay. He just kind of rolls with it, which is just interesting. So totally different. I didn't go through the what's happening to my child or the deathly ill and several trips to the ER like many people did. So I think I had the biggest shock when they first told me he made antibodies. I don't remember this, but my mom reminded me recently that I called her. I was at the University of Colorado Hospital. That's where we lived. Not at the hospital, but in Denver from the early research studies. And I called my mom like hysterical sobbing. I remember sort of doing this, but apparently I've like trauma blocked it out of my head. And she thought she was going to have to call like the fire department or something to help me. I'm like, no one's being attacked. No one's dead. I just give me a second. And then I told her that he was making antibodies and he was going to have type 1 diabetes like me. But then, 10 years. It's a long time to process it. So it was a little calmer once things started for us. But right after diagnosis is a really hard time for most families, for sure. So what do you guys remember about at the hospital, early days at home? What do you think?
Tavia, as someone who already had type 1, one of the hardest things for me as a parent that had no experience with type 1, you go through, or I don't know if everyone goes through this, but you just are trying to figure out why it happened. You're trying to make sense of where it came from. And you go through this reel repeatedly. I would say the first couple years, to be honest, I did. And I don't know, maybe it's different when you already have type 1. I don't know if you processed that on your own and then your son was able. I do wonder that.
I counted out the illnesses that had when he was 6 weeks old, he had RSV. And we had to go to the hospital. He couldn't breathe. And, he had to have suction out all the respiratory infection stuff. And I was like, I bet that started the countdown ticker.
Yeah.
Like
So
it probably predisposed his body. And then somebody fed him ice cream when we were like doing no dairy until a certain age because there was a study that came out that said that you shouldn't. And I was like, that person gave him dairy even though we said not to. And that totally sped up the process in my mind, right? It wouldn't have mattered, right, for him if that trigger was already tripped by the RSV or the first flu he had or whatever. Each insult that happens to the body once that path starts, I know this logically, but I wanted there to be a pinpoint reason that I could like focus that upset and anger and sadness and all that yuck on that moment. Totally.
I think that's good to hear. I guess it's just human nature. You want to solve the problem, or you want to know why it happened. But that was kind of where I was at those first couple of years. I never slept because I was so lost trying to get it all figured out and knowing everything depended on me. I started drinking alcohol more. I mean, I wasn't a big drinker before, but I convinced myself that was helpful to numb myself to get through 12 to 15 shots a day. I am a perfectionist, so diabetes was especially difficult because it's not perfect.
Yeah.
You can't control it, and you can't, no matter how much. I mean, obviously the work you put in is reflected often in the A1C.
I should clarify something. I just thought about this. Jessica, you said 12 to 15 shots a day. You mean finger pokes and insulin injections, not shots of alcohol per day.
I was thinking that too. Like,
I was like, I better just back this up a little bit and
I'm
just
a small person.
make sure we're clear.
you handle it well.
No, I isolated myself. I was already an introvert, but just dealing with the trauma and the massiveness of it's just an enormous disease to manage. And you can't,
it's just consuming.
It's all consuming. You go into a vortex and you basically don't have the energy to try to teach people or to think that they can understand. So, or at least I didn't. But then on another front, I would also talk about it all the time. I think I kind of became the diabetes mom or the diabetes lady. And I don't think there was a way around that. I'm a little embarrassed looking back that, even at the grocery store, I would talk to the clerk and it would come up as they were checking the extra vegetables that I was getting. Oh, well, I have to get these because my daughter just got diagnosed. And
because you needed that connection somehow.
Someone.
It's not like an easy, you were just like anybody that could be within earshot trying to reach out and make a connection somewhere.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And then the other thing that I did, which looking back made it harder, was I tried to launch back into normal life. I tried to just pretend like we could just jump back in. We could sign up for those summer camps when she's 4.5 years old and everything could work. I would just have to be there somehow doing 12 shots and not alcohol shots, insulin shots, managing everything from the sidelines. Yet my life would continue on as normal, and I think
and you would keep doing all the things you did as a mom and as an adult along with all the diabetes things and you can make it work. Yeah.
I was everything was going to go back literally like the next 2 weeks. It was just, we got this, we can handle this. We're going to steamroll forward. Obviously, all those factors combined is just kind of a disaster. Looking back, I don't
slap in the face.
Realize what a disaster I really was. But yeah, we made it through.
What was it like early days for you, Jamie? You guys at home?
Well, at the time that Ellie was diagnosed, so this was just over 4 years ago. So Ellie was diagnosed, and I think it was 3 days later, my husband was diagnosed with PTSD from work. He's a police officer. Me not knowing what his triggers were, what was going on with him, what his therapy, like he's an introvert himself. So he kept that all to himself. So I felt like I didn't want to put more on his plate. So I just took over everything and, don't worry about it. I got it. And I could feel myself getting like more and more wound up, like tighter. Like something was going to give. I'd cry in the shower. That way he couldn't see. Yeah, it was everything. And of course, she's 21 months old. So trying to eat, what can we give her? What is she going to eat? How much do I bolus? Did I give her enough food for the insulin? Did I give her enough insulin for the food? Like it was just all consuming. So I ended up being able to take, I think it was 37 weeks off for critical illness leave. Her pediatrician signed off because of the age that she was at and just because it is life-changing. I mean, as much as you want to pretend that, oh yeah, you can still live with it and it's normal. When it's brand new, there is no normal. It is like walking on lava. So, Yeah, so I was able to take the 37 weeks off and try and manage. Yeah, here in Canada, cannabis is legal. So I actually did get a prescription from my doctor. Tried that to just kind of relax at night, just take some of the weight off. Thankfully, I didn't become too dependent on it. Like every 3 or 4 days, maybe step outside. But yeah, that wasn't working. So I just stopped that. But yeah, so it was a long, long first year, because between that and the therapy that my husband was going through, they were recommending that he get out of the house for 4 hours at a time, because he had to work his way back to being able to work and be away from the house. And I just felt like, okay, they don't understand. How can they take my support away? And here I am by myself trying to keep my kid alive. And I remember one time we did a sensor change, and it was just after supper time. And the sixes have a 2-hour warm up window, and she started to go low. And we didn't know what was going on. And we're like, Ellie, wake up, wake up. And she was starting to go unconscious. And like, we're squeezing juice into her and like doing whatever we can. We called 911. Our neighbors are all concerned. And we're like, yeah, she just had a low, expect it more. We're going to be that neighbor, right? So that was really scary in the beginning, just to be like, oh, so this is our new normal. And of course, and she's 2 years old. So trying to get anything into her, and she's fighting and she wants to go to sleep. And so, yeah, that was really rough in the beginning. And like you said, talking to anybody, like diabetes just comes up in conversation. And my husband's family is all around us, but his sisters and stuff, they work full-time jobs, and their husbands. And at the time, my stepmother-in-law, she worked as well, but she took the grandkids quite a bit. Well, she wasn't comfortable with the type 1 diabetes, and it's not something you can push on somebody. And so we were on our own little island and doing our own thing.
In my experience there it's different because the role that I was in already, I already was working as a diabetes educator. I was already around a group of people that focused on people's health who live with diabetes. So I could go to work and I could tell people what was going on, and they wouldn't be completely oblivious to what I'm talking about. And so I had a little built-in work support that way. And my mom, who my parents raised me through the dark ages of type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
So they don't understand diabetes type 1 management now because the insulins are different. The technology didn't exist, but they understand the spontaneity of it and the things that you have to do to try to get a routine, and the challenges and the frustrations and the imperfection and the royal mess ups where you give the wrong kind of insulin, or you totally forget the insulin at home and you're out to eat, or illnesses and what it does. They understood that. And so I had some support built in, was just hugely helpful. And when I started working at IDS, I noted this common theme that you guys are sharing. Your experiences were totally different with the diagnosis story, right? The way that you guys arrived at the diagnosis is different. The ages of your kids, different. But you have this common thread of that initial overwhelm. It's just huge. And the feeling that you can't get it right no matter what you do, and trying to find connections and feeling isolated. It's a part of being a parent, diabetes or not. And then you throw diabetes in there, type 1 diabetes, and then it's sort of like, it's like exponential, the amount that you can feel. You had no idea that you could feel this many feelings all at once, right?
For us too, like Ellie, she was born with a condition called Dandy-Walker syndrome. So it's a spectrum, and thankfully she's on the very mild end. So she has slightly extra fluid on her brain. So she was delayed with walking and all that stuff too. So trying to, talk to other parents about your kid, and you're like, she's not there yet because of the Dandy-Walker. Oh, and she has diabetes. I feel like I'm like the mom that has her kid in bubble wrap, and like, oh, she, like, we can't do that. We can't do that, So it was during COVID and trying to relate to other people, and it was just not successful.
So, what do you think? This is something I'd ask you guys to think about ahead of time. If you could go back in time and tell yourself something to let you know that it would be okay, what do you think would have, or that someone else could have told you or said to you that might have been comforting?
I know for me, like joining all these groups for diabetes and stuff, and you're seeing these people that are like 3 and 4 years in, and their kids are older and they've got those straight lines, and you're like, why can't I do that? Like, you're striving so hard to, get your kid to that spot and be like, yes, we're doing this, we can do it. Or constantly checking the time and range. don't do that. Like, I think that's part of what caused my anxiety because I was like so hung up on that. Like, why can't I get this right? Why are they a better parent than I am? What are they doing that I'm not? And it was just so hard that way to just sit back and be like, that's not us.
I think for me, it would have been nice to hear you're going to learn how to play a poor hand well. You've been dealt a bad deck of cards, and what you're going to learn is how to play it well. And you're going to need strength to do that. And you're also going to learn, it actually shows you what love really is. That I've kind of seen that through the diagnosis with, obviously it's a struggle in a marriage to go through such a hard diagnosis with a child. And yet you hopefully keep coming back to each other, and it's not easy. The help that you get, the connections that you make, it really does show you where love is in these kind of small places, even at grocery store when you talk to the clerks.
Like this, the random acts of kindness and the occasionally when you reach out and you get a good connection, even for a minute. It's a really good perspective.
But also,
Never thought about it like that.
It would have been nice to hear, like, don't worry, you're angry, but it will subside. The anger subsides, and you still won't have good sleep, but life can start to feel more normal after a couple years.
Yeah.
And you can live many years without sleeping the whole night through consecutively, and you'll still make it, right? Wouldn't that be good to know?
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but truly.
You may age a little quicker, but
Right. Yeah, true enough.
yeah, I found for us trying to sleep through the night, I actually had her in our bed because I was so afraid I wasn't going to hear the alarms. And that was like my biggest thing. Like, oh my God, am I going to wake up and she's going to be unconscious? Like, I was so paranoid about that. In the beginning, thankfully, she did night feeds. So we would do like the little sippy cups and she would drink the chocolate milk, and we did the Fairlife because high protein, less sugar. Like, we did all that. And then one day she just reached the age where she's like, nope, I'm not doing night feeds anymore. So that we had to go to mini dosing glucagon.
Wow.
So like at any moment, things can just change and you have to learn to roll with them. And it was just... Have you heard of Sugar Pixel?
Actually just got one to give to the school. I'm a little delayed. They have a glucose, but there's
we
another.
We have two Sugar Pixels, and one is in our bedroom and one is on our main floor. The teacher that we had, she didn't want one, just outside of her comfort level, which I understand. So next year, she may have one in her classroom, but those are the best things ever.
Because then you can sleep. You know that you're going to get alerted and you're going to wake up.
And I have the alarm on the lowest setting and I can still hear it through my whole house. So I know I'm not sleeping through. And my husband too. There were a few times that he was on nights and I was sleeping. And of course, it'd been a long day. I was exhausted and I just didn't hear the alarms on her pump or my phone and we had a few arguments about it. And of course, it scared me too, because if I wasn't waking up to these alarms and he's not able to leave work, like, thankfully, he's a police officer, so lights and sirens if he needed to, just to have that peace of mind for something to wake me up and know. Because as soon as it would go off, I'm like, I'm up. So he wouldn't have to worry. So he knows it's being handled. And
I think it's important to know that as a parent, it happens to everybody.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure there are some parents out there, there's probably plenty of them that never sleep through an alert. Like, they could just be up. But I'm not one. I'm tired. Right? Tired at night because we're getting interrupted sleep because of type 1. I mean, not all the time now, right? But there are just times where doses need to be adjusted. Their physical activity was different. The food was different. And we're going to get woken up at night. And between my son's alerts and my alerts, I mean, I don't sleep, right? Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have a run and I'll have a whole week and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't wake up for anybody's alerts except for the alarm clock. It's amazing. But totally, you're going to sleep through alerts, and it's terrifying when it happens the first couple of times. Less terrifying for me because, again, I've had type 1 for 43 years. I haven't died yet, and so chances are pretty slim that something that dramatic would happen and I wouldn't wake up if glucose was that low. And same for my son. He feels as low. He's old enough and he has symptoms. It's different for each person whether they get low glucose symptoms when things are really low at night. So it's good that you guys have some tools to help when you know, like, okay, we've been sleeping through alarms. We've tried all the different tricks. Like, let's do this. That's nice.
Yeah. They're a lifesaver though. Like, literally.
I'm going to put ours back in my son's room because he's a teenage boy and they can actually sleep through fire alarms. Did you know? So he doesn't wake up for anything. I have to go in and like physically wake him up and be like, your sensor says you're low. Are you low?
Ellie sleeps like the dead. Like now, with having the mini dose glucagon, she'll feel me pull down her pants because we always do it in the butt, and she'll be like, "No, mommy," and she like kind of like puts up a small fight, and then I give her the shot, and she rolls over and she goes right back to sleep, like nothing happened. So like, I guess that's a small blessing, but I know the first few times, like the finger pokes and the needles, when she stopped crying, that was probably the most heartbreaking. I'm like, she's getting used to this.
A word from our sponsor. Byram Healthcare understands that managing diabetes isn't one size fits all. With a full range of CGMs, insulin pumps, and diabetes supplies from top brands, Byram makes it easy to get what you need, hassle-free, shipped right to your door. And Byram's team of experts helps navigate insurance so you can focus on living your best life. Ready for better diabetes care? Visit byramhealthcare.com/podcast or call 866-692-8024 and select option 3. And now, back to our program.
I was just thinking about, right now, you guys just described how it was in the beginning, and you're no longer in the beginning. How do you feel when you think about your child's type 1 diabetes now, overall?
I'd say about 6 months ago, I just kind of took a turn and I was like, that's enough. How can I be a better role model and a better caretaker? I think it's human nature, we just naturally, hopefully want to be better than we are or were. And then, so that's when I stopped drinking. I started cooking more meals on the table. So I can't say, I guess her numbers got better, but it was more as a person, finally had the capacity to, I wouldn't say take better care of myself, but just notice that I could be better. And you stop trying to make sense of how it happened, why it happened. The anger subsides. Every conversation when you see people, you're not trying to somehow configure diabetes in. In fact, at this point, I actually make a point of trying not to talk about diabetes. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And then the control and perfection that you thought you had completely now by the wayside. And it kind of it's almost a relief knowing that you're not fooling yourself anymore. We're human. We're battling this particular disease. Other people are battling other things, but we're imperfect. And there's nothing we can do about that. Except, keep trying as best as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Honestly, I call it the worst science experiment ever. Never ends. You never know fully how you're doing with it, and it can change at a moment's notice. So what worked on the first day isn't going to work on the third day, and it's going to change again by the 10th day.
And then the sensor fails again.
Yeah. Like half a day of where you thought it was working, and then you realize, like, here's this new pattern emerging, and it was really just the sensor.
That's
right. Or there's an occlusion, or like there's always something. And it's like you're trying to solve this mystery. Well, keep your kid alive and make the best of it. And like I definitely, so I was diagnosed with PTSD and severe anxiety because of how young she was, with everything going on with my husband, working at the hospital. I've learned to just kind of sit back more instead of trying to control everything, to just sit back and kind of go, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try this. Instead of being like, why isn't it working?
Yeah. I learned to, especially for her benefit too, is seeing it. And I think I learned this from some of the group work that we did at IDS, and seeing things more as data. If a day is really bad, I used to beat myself up. It would just be, I couldn't stand to see the numbers, but now it's like, okay, let's look back at the day. What could have gone better? And not calling the school all the time to, just kind of, all right, this happened today. We're going to try again tomorrow. And that's become a lot easier.
Great.
We were very fortunate with the daycare that we had. So she was in a home daycare. The girls, she decided that, well, they were moving. Where she was moving, it didn't make sense for us to still continue on. And they wanted to expand their family more. So we then had to find a new daycare. So we got turned down by numerous home daycares because it's a liability. They didn't want that. We found a licensed daycare, and they went above and beyond, like phenomenal. And to this day, like a couple of the girls still watch her, if we go out for something. So like that has been just great because they know, they understand. But now that she's in school and starting back at square one and having to educate the nurse, the teacher, the principal, and we don't have school nurses. We just have two, and I'm not even sure if they're nurses or PSWs, personal support workers. But one goes in for the first nutrition break and one goes in for the second one. So all day long, I'm constantly like, they're like, how much do you want us to bolus? This is how much she's got on board. This is how many carbs she ate. Oh, she changed her mind. Like trying to balance all that. And then she's in an after school program on top of it. And so there's another person to contact all day long. I'd love to say that, we just roll with it and let it happen. But, we've had a situation a couple times with the after school program where they've over bolused quite significantly. My husband or I are leaving work or he's off, but has some stuff to do. So he put her in the after school program. He's had to go pick her up. And it's, as much as you want to be like, we've just learned to roll with it as best as we can. It's still like you're on your toes. There's no shutting it off.
Well, that's true. That's true. How old is Grace now?
Grace is almost 8. She'll be 8 this summer. Yeah.
And Ellie's 6 now. Yeah.
Just turned 6 on Friday.
That's funny how time passes.
I'm trying more now as she is starting to become a little more independent. She catches her lows. She has a little candy bag that we did have to go through. She was sneaking the candy for a little bit. You go through these trial and errors and you have to keep trying and you have to say, okay, we're going to try again. And you're not supposed to do that. But just making sure to, like this morning, after her 5th sensor change in the last 2 days, just saying, Grace, you've been incredible the last 2 days. Just making sure she knows I'm acknowledging how hard this must be for her. And it's hard for me too, but like she's the one who has this burden the rest of her life. And I feel like as she's getting older, that's really helpful, especially on the harder days. And telling her, you might be a little tired today because I had to roll you over a lot last night. You were on your sensor. Just, cut yourself a little bit of a break if you feel tired.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we do that with Ellie too, should be like, I don't like my diabetes. And we try to explain it to her too. Like she's got kids with autism in her class and her school and stuff. And we'll be like, they're different like you, only their brain works differently, whereas your pancreas works differently, like nobody's perfect. Nobody's 100%. We all have these little quirks about us and, you do the best you can. But yeah, I try not to let her see me get frustrated about things. It's really hard when you see them trending down and you're like, drink your juice. Okay. Can you drink your juice, please? So it's like, okay, we've got candy. What do you want? Like trying to encourage her. But we've always said to her, like, she can have whatever she wants food wise. Just let us know so we can bolus you. That way she doesn't feel like she's not getting things other kids are. Like even at school, if somebody brings in cupcakes, yep, she can have one, we'll do what we can, or, her numbers are this, give her this insulin. But we've always tried to make sure that she's like the rest of the kids with food and everything else.
Have you guys heard of that poem, Welcome to Holland by Emily Kingsley? And it basically talks about a parent with a child with a disability and how you think you're going to Italy and you're so excited and you got all the tour books and you got on the plane, but then the plane lands and you're in Holland and you're angry and you didn't want to be in Holland. And then as you can imagine, it goes into the details of you now have to open your mind up and let go of the fact that you're not in Italy in order to enjoy Holland. And that was actually extremely helpful for me. I read that poem, I reread it, and it helped me kind of move forward into Holland, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Instead of like even being a mom, and this is what you expected it to be like, but this is what it is. Mm-hmm. You have to accept it and move forward, or I call it kind of like a pity party. You can stop and enjoy the party, or you can get stuck there and that's it.
It's very painful to realize that you, one, had dreams for your child. You don't realize until the dreams are completely different, right? It's painful to realize that it's not going to be how you pictured. And you don't even realize that you were actually picturing things a certain way until you can no longer picture them that way. And that was initial, but now I'm kind of moving past that, which feels good. There's still pain there, but
yeah, for sure.
I always imagine like Christmas time and stuff and the baking and, and then I attempted it one time and she's trying to shove things in her mouth. And I'm like, I have no idea how many carbs are in that. Like, stop. Like all of a sudden my like blood pressure's through the roof and I'm like, okay, this wasn't a good idea. So now we do the like pre-bought frozen stuff because I'm like, if she eats that, I can kind of still carb count. But, like all of a sudden she's dumping half the flour on the table and half in the bowl and then licking. And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing.
Sometimes I watch those moments and I just wonder what it would be like to be able to enjoy it, and that makes me sad still sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's the new normal.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Then you say, oh, well, moving on to the next.
Yeah.
What do we
That was
do?
the moment that just
Exactly.
passed. And now, okay, let's see what else is going on present.
Right.
And my son is getting to, he's 1 year left in high school and thinking about going to college. And I'm hoping that he picks a college nearby so that he could still live at home, which at least for another couple, he's young for his age as far as developmentally, like some kids that age are out like in leadership councils and they work a job and they do sports and they do their schoolwork but that's not my son. My son he does have, he has ADHD and he has sort of slower processing speed, some frontal lobe slowness, let's say, executive functioning slowness. And so the idea of him going out to college and then with type 1 diabetes where he doesn't wake up for his alarms and like, we have to figure this out. We only have a year left before I don't want to be the one that puts my foot down to say you're not going to be safe.
Yeah.
So you can't. So we have to figure out a way to make it so he can be his best self and support that, but also keep him safe. So
I've already looked up drinking and everything else, and just so that way I can be prepared, or like the Juicebox podcast, like the After Dark episodes, and like,
yeah, good.
because I don't want to be caught off guard. And thankfully, my husband has a coworker and she has type 1. So I can kind of be like, hey, what happens when you do this? Or my cousin's also type 1 and be like, so when you were this age, how, like, to kind of get ahead
You
of
could
it.
ask me too, but not well. No, I'll tell you some safety things and some experiential things that I learned from and learned as a diabetes educator later.
That actually has been probably the most helpful for me is at IDS working with you guys who have been through diabetes for the last 15, 20, 30 years. I think is more helpful hearing your perspectives than fellow caretakers who are just kind of like scrambling like myself, because I see the light at the end of the tunnel and I can get better perspective that way.
That's for us part of why we do it, because if we have to have the stinking thing, we might as well be able to use that to help other people not struggle as much as some of us struggled on the way through.
Yeah.
It's a benefit that we can give and we love giving it. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's like our team that we have here in Canada, our doctor's office and their nurse and everything else. And they recommend changes and stuff. But every time they recommend a change, I'm like, Tavia, this is what they mentioned. What do you think? Like, just because you live it. So like they have office hours of this to this. And on weekends, if something happens, you can't get a hold of anybody.
Right.
Whereas I can send you an email real quick or in a text being like, check your email and, get an answer back usually same day. And, it's peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a great thing going.
Yes, we do.
I love my team and I love my job and I love working. It's been fun for me to work with families too. I have a special bond with parents, though, being a parent of a kid with type 1 diabetes, that's been part about my job that I really enjoy getting the opportunity. And the Time Up for Caregivers groups that we started a while ago was another good opportunity to be able to interact with people going through the muck.
And that group. I feel like all I did was cry on that in those groups. I feel bad for the people that.
That's what happens to everybody. I mean, not everybody, but like at least one, if not 2 or 3 people, when we have a good group size, like it's a place where you can breathe, and
be heard.
And that nobody on there would be like, what is the matter with her? Type 1 is not that hard for your kid.
I have a neighbor actually, and she has a little guy who's type 1. And next year, our 2 will be in the same class. Like we've actually asked for them to be in the same class so they can kind of, learn from each other. Uh-huh. And there's nights, here's another low, or hey, do you have any Zoloft? Or, like I literally can see her backyard from my front porch. So like it's nice to have that so close.
So Fran.
Yeah, sorry to have that like so close. And about the only person that we have watch Ellie on a regular basis, and actually like if something happens to my husband or I, that's her guardian, is my cousin, whose sister is the one with type 1, because she's experienced with it. She has that resources to her to help out, because like that was another thing. Should anything happen to us, nobody knows how to handle it. What do we do?
I think that was hard for me and still is how relationships have changed after the diagnosis based on how or lack of involvement, lack of interest, lack of just general
Knowledge.
understanding. You just can't leave. I can't leave her with even my own parents. And so I haven't reconciled that in my mind yet. I don't know if I ever will. I guess you accept it, which I have, but it doesn't make it easier or less sad.
No, I 100% can relate to that. Like my family is at least an hour away.
Mhm.
Some of them are more like 3 hours away. So, and I lost my mom 10, 11 years ago now. And she was a nurse. So she would have been like so hands-on. And to not have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another piece to the puzzle too, is the ongoing relationships and figuring those out. Which ones can you still build on for understanding your child's type 1 and keeping them safe so that they can spend time in other people's houses and you can take some downtime for you to go do some things. That's always a challenge for sure.
And it is getting easier as she gets older and can catch her lows. And
Yeah,
the devices
for sure.
make things easier, just being able to use the phone to dose versus shots. Like everyone.
Yeah, Ellie still doesn't feel highs or lows. And we're actually
Thanks,
having our
Noel.
first friends party.
Yeah.
And all the parents are like, do you mind if I come? And I'm like, of course. Like, because I don't want to be that parent that's like, oh, we don't want you there. And then all of a sudden, like, their kid has a party and be like, do you mind if I come? Because she's got type 1. Like, I
Right.
found like that's been so hard to just let her be a kid in that sense, but without being that mom that's like, so I'm just going to sit in your driveway while she parties.
That's a joke, by the way, because I think most all moms of kids with especially young kids with type 1, we're always nearby. Like, you're going to this big event for the school at the next city. I guess I have some errands to run. I'll just be in the parking lot and I'll do those errands while you're eating lunch.
We volunteered to chaperone. We volunteer to be an extra hand. Like my husband and I actually, with our work schedules, I am off days that he works. So that way one of us is always available should something happen at school. My workplace and I've kind of butted heads a little bit on that, trying to get them to understand and everything else. But it's worked out for the best for her. But come summertime, like again, it's going to be another challenge because we can't send her off to day camps because most of them in this area are run by teenagers who aren't legally responsible and there's no nurse on staff. So it's like, how do you do this and be a productive member of society and make sure your kid's safe? That's a struggle.
I have gotten better at asking people who seem maybe willing to take it on. And I am actually surprised. There's been 2, maybe 3, like a friend's play date or a birthday party, which was at a doctor's house. So it was a doctor. But they did a good job. It feels good when that happens for the first time because you start to see, okay, there's possibility here. There is freedom on the horizon. It's going to be these little one-offs for a while until she can do more herself.
Yeah.
What about anything that you want to relay to other, say, newly diagnosed families or anybody who's been sort of rolling through it all over a few years now, kind of in the situation you guys are both in? Anything you want to leave them with?
It does get better. This is your new normal, but it does get better. What seems like such a big deal in the beginning, as you learn to handle it, it's almost like your first sickness with a child, like a cold, or you're like, oh my God, what do I do? And like, are they okay? Are they in pain? And then the next illness, you're like, okay, well, this worked last time. Let's try this. Like it gets better once you get more comfortable with it.
Yeah, and more knowledge. I feel like now I can diagnose things so quickly with all the information that I've absorbed the last 2 years, and I know how to look things up and where to find information and who to contact. That it's not stressful anymore. It's just a job. It's a job that you do and then it's done and then you have more job and it's kind of a sporadic job, kind of a bit unpredictable with no monetary reward, but people always tell you, oh, it gets easier. Like when you have babies and they're like, oh, when they get older. I never liked hearing that. It does, but it really does. It gets more, you just get better. That's what happens.
Yes. So the diabetes doesn't get really easier. It changes all the time. And there are always curveballs coming at us.
You're going to be forced to get better. You're forced
Right.
to get better.
You get tougher. you get skills under your belt, and you get more confidence with what needs to be done and the acceptance of it doesn't need to be perfect because there is no perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, our last trip to Emerge here, one of our nurses was type 1, and the doctor that was on said to us, because she saw that we're 4 years in, what do you need? Not, well, we're going to try this and this. It was, what do you need?
Yeah.
Because she knew that we'd been doing this so long, we probably had a better idea than she did. And that was so comforting. And we're like, let's try the Zofran, and then let's try an IV. And,
You got
This
it.
is what we know she needs.
You got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So
I think
it
that's
was
important, because I think in
Yeah.
the very beginning, you can't have that. You can't. You have to go through all of the
Mm-hmm.
emotions and the knowledge that you need and the practice of it and the skill building and the repetition to get where you are. So I think that's a good place to conclude for us today, is just to let people know that it will get better than in the beginning, in that you will make it through and will figure out what needs to be done, especially for young children.
in the beginning, it's a scratched, foggy crystal ball. And it gets a little clearer as the years go by.
A very tired
Yeah.
one.
Today's session was really nice time to reflect back on what things were like for Jess and Jamie, and even for myself, when our kids were first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, what it felt like early days and the things we struggled with, and that common thread of just that overwhelm and anxiety and the anger. We talked about how coming through that was a huge process. It's life-altering. It's not easy. We're all still tired all the time. That doesn't go away. But that we find ways over time to get connections made and find what our kids really need to be healthy, even though they have type 1 diabetes. And that we're all trying our hardest to keep improving what we can do as parents. And that it was beneficial for all of us to work with other people who we can relate to intermittently, whether it's online or if it's in a visit or it's in a group where you can work with other parents who are working on letting go of trying to over control everything, or handling emotions, learning how to process emotions. Those are all helpful things that we've sort of waded through over a few years' time. And we're hoping that this information will be beneficial to other parents out there, whether it's a new diagnosis in your family or you've been wading through all this, I call it the muck, all the yucky stuff, the stress and the imperfections and the feeling like a failure as a parent when things don't go as desired, especially with type 1 diabetes management for your kid. And just know that you will make it through come what may, good, bad, or ugly, and that you can find support, sometimes in surprising ways. We hope that the information that we talked about today is beneficial. And if anyone has questions about what services we offer for support at Integrated Diabetes Services, or if you have questions about how to set up a visit with one of our clinicians who also live with type 1 diabetes, like myself or any of my other teammates, just reach out and let me know.
Thanks for tuning in to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast is brought to you by Integrated Diabetes Services, where experience meets expertise, passion meets compassion, and diabetes care is personal because we live it too. Our team of clinicians, all living with type 1 diabetes, understands the challenges firsthand. We're here to help no matter where you are in the world. From glucose management to self-care strategies, the latest tech, sports and exercise, weight loss, type 1 pregnancy, and emotional well-being, we've got you covered. We offer consultations in English and Spanish via phone, video chat, email, and text. Want to learn more? Visit integrateddiabetes.com or email info@integrateddiabetes.com to schedule a consultation. On behalf of Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, I'm Gary Shiner, wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And don't forget to think like a pancreas.